I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, Yotam Ottolenghi, chef and author of 9 best-selling cookbooks, including Jerusalem, Plenty, and Comfort, co-owner of 12 restaurants and delis, most of them located in London, and a longtime columnist for The Guardian and The New York Times. And for the past decade, the brand's creative hub is the Ottolenghi Test Kitchen, where a team of diverse cooks create and test recipes, with Yotam at the helm. The Ottolenghi website says there's a building in North London built from equal parts brick and tahini, walls coated in olive oil, and floors stained with spice, habanero and fenugreek, Aleppo chili, and Ras El Hanout. This is the Ottolenghi Test Kitchen. Later in the show, you'll meet Hunter Lewis, editor-in-chief of Food and Wine magazine. Hunter has run many magazine test kitchens and takes us behind the scenes to see how the sausage is literally and figuratively made. Yotam is on tour now in Australia, and he'll be in the US and Canada in just a couple weeks. We'll talk more about that at the end of the show. But first, my conversation with Yotam Ottolenghi.
Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Where are you? Are you in the US or are you at home?
At home in London.
Oh, okay. I'm instructed to tell you that all of my friends say hello.
Oh, are those many?
Oh, yeah, all of them. They all say hello. Yotam grew up in Israel, but he went to culinary school and started his career as a pastry chef in London, which is how he met Sami Tamimi, a Palestinian chef who would become his restaurant partner and co-cookbook author. They opened their first deli in 2002, and Ottolenghi has since become a household name, known for creative twists on Middle Eastern food. I'm not sure how many people know that you had a different career before you got into cooking. You have a master's degree in philosophy and literature. You were planning to get a PhD. What were you doing before you decided to go to culinary school, and how did you fall into this career in food?
Well, I did go to university in Tel Aviv. That was a long time ago. And I studied philosophy and literature, which I loved. And I still love those subjects. But I felt a little bit isolated in academia. And I really wanted to branch out and do something else. I loved cooking. And I thought, well, I'll take a year off and I'll try to do it professionally, which I did. And it wasn't a smooth sailing. It was difficult. It was hard. I was like in my kind of mid-20s, and I just entered kitchens where some people were 10 years younger than me, with more experience. But I stuck out, and I really loved, I love kitchens. I still love kitchens. I think what I found in cooking is that the audience is bigger. You know, there's more people interested in cooking than they are in the subject that I was working on when I was at university. And I just felt that the conversation is more interesting. I love the commonality of cooking. I love the fact that it's got so much to offer to so many people. So I stuck around, and here I am. People love eating. Even people who don't like cooking, they love eating. Hardly anyone doesn't love eating. So It's a very good conversation starter.
Let's talk a little bit about your childhood. You grew up in Jerusalem, and of course, a lot of kosher people, a lot of Muslim people, so it's not easy to get pork and shrimp, but your mother found a way.
It is. Yeah. My mother comes from a Jewish family, but not a very traditional one. So there was pork. My grandparents are from Germany originally, and so there was a one non-kosher butcher in Jerusalem at the time, and she managed to get some sliced ham from him on occasion, wrapped in brown paper, so nobody knew. And she's, I mean, and I'm slightly embarrassed to say that she even sent us to school with ham sandwiches. That we were supposed to tell our friends that were Turkey. I don't know how we could have gotten away with that, but that was the story. Yeah, that's slightly embarrassing, but the truth.
I love it. And also, maybe if all of these kids at school had never had ham, they didn't know the difference of what it looked like, maybe?
Yeah, well, exactly. I suppose that was the case, but she made it very clear to us that we shouldn't share our sandwiches with them because that would have been a big no-no.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but your dad's nickname for you was Galusu, which translates to greedy, a glutton. Did I say it right?
Golotto. It's an Italian.
Golotto.
Yeah, my father was Italian, and yes, that was the term that he used for me because I really did love food and I was kind of obsessed with it. And I saw everything. I think if you are that kind of person, you will recognize that I saw everything through the perspective of food. Like if we would travel, I would want to eat everything. I would do that. I was obsessed, and I still am. So yeah, that's what brought me to food, I suppose, that young obsession that my father saw in me.
I was the same. And it feels like now we're just normalized because as a kid growing up, I remember my mom giving me a penny to throw in the fountain at the mall. And every time I would wish, I hope we have pizza for dinner. I hope we have pizza for dinner. And people weren't like that when I was a kid. And now everybody's obsessed with food.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I think we live in a world where there's just in people who live in the kind of lucky enough to be surrounded in food, like so many people in the West are, there's just a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful human creation that we've created these incredible cuisines. It's the best thing in the world.
You've said that all childhood memories are food memories. Can you share one that stands out?
Oh, there's so many.
I know.
When I was a young teenager, I traveled to Japan for the first time with my family. My father was working there. He was a scientist. And we were invited to a Japanese home. And my parents told my brother and I that we had to make sure that we really behave because manners are very important in Japan. And we grew up in a place where manners are not that important, so we didn't have them. And that we had to eat what we were given. We had to be extra polite, and we were. And then at the end of the evening, the host asked if we want to go and play computer games, which we didn't have when we were growing up. And we said, of course, we would love. We were in Japan, and she put us in a room with an old computer and a new computer. It would be old now, and we played that. And then she brought us desserts, and the dessert was this kind of red bean paste cake or cookie. Now I can see the point of it. When I was a kid, I thought it was the most horrible thing I could ever eat. And they were like really looking great. But once you bit into them, that effectively you ate bean paste. And my brother and I were like stuck in that room with our computer screen and two massive red bean paste cakes. And we thought, like, what are we doing with this? Like, we have to eat it. It's insulting if we don't. But it tastes horrible. So what we did was even worse. We just threw them out the window. And when we were coming out, we realized that where they fell was this like perfect Zen garden, that everything could show. It was really the most dreadful thing I've done in my life. Leave that house with the red bean paste on the gravel. Bad boys.
Did your family see it?
I don't think my parents saw it, and I only told them about it like years later, and when it was like safe to tell the story.
I love that. I can imagine them raking the bean paste out of the garden. I have to ask you about your last meal. What would you choose to eat for your last meal?
Oh, okay. Well, that's always the hardest thing in the world because I find the last meal changes every time someone asks me this question because I always think like, what am I in the mood for today? What do I want to eat today? Because my last meal yesterday is not my last meal of today. You did kind of point me to the fact that I will need to answer this question. So I do have to answer. I answer it. So my father was Italian and we used to travel occasionally to Italy, and what he loved most is spaghetti alla vongole, which is spaghetti with clams. It's one of those really simple Italian dishes. They involve olive oil, garlic, clams, and chopped up chili. and some chopped up parsley. I think that's kind of the basics of it. And it is something that is so nice in its simplicity and its minimalism. And I love it myself. And I normally don't make it at home. Whenever I go to a restaurant that serves spaghetti alla vongole, this is what I have. And I could eat that every single day. There was a trip to Italy, I do remember, with my dad, where every meal we went to, he got that.
That's funny. That was my childhood favorite. If we went out to Italian, I always got that too, even as a little kid.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just so good. It's just so good. The kind of the light flavor of the clams, the garlic, the good olive oil, a bit of chili. It's just a wonderful thing. So this would definitely be part of my last meal. I also love almondy marzipan-y things, and I would love something like an almond tart or an almond cake or an almond and citrus cake, like an almond and orange cake, one of these things. I find them so comforting and delicious. There's actually in Jerusalem, Sammy and I have a recipe for this clementine and almond cake, which uses clementine and juice, ground almonds, lots of butter, eggs, and it's so soft and just got this kind of wonderful aroma of citrus and almonds, which I love.
For his last meal, Yotam Ottolenghi wants spaghetti alla vongole and some kind of almond dessert, like the clementine almond cake from his cookbook, Jerusalem. That recipe is actually up on the Ottolenghi website, so I will link to it in the show notes so you can experience Yotam's last cake yourself. After the break, how much does Yotam actually cook these days? And we'll learn about the inner workings of both the Ottolenghi and Food and Wine magazine test kitchens. One of my favorite places in the Pacific Northwest, the most charming little seaside village, is Langley, Washington. Langley is on the south end of Whidbey Island, just a 20-minute ferry ride plus a 35-minute drive from Seattle. And if you love mysteries, if you are a true crime or murder podcast junkie, you're going to want to spend the weekend in Langley, February 21st and 22nd for Mystery Weekend, where locals and visitors run around town collecting clues, living in a story that local writers have created, interacting with costume characters, trying to solve the big mystery. The clues are planted in local shops, like Grey Horse Mercantile, a dreamy specialty food shop that sells cheeses, my favorite brands of chocolate and tin fish, the Star Store, a Langley classic, and Beer Cutery for more cheese and chocolate and beverages. Book a place to stay and spend the whole weekend solving mysteries, eating great food, and maybe even winning big prizes. Plan your trip and learn more about Mystery Weekend at visitlangley.com. That's visitlangley.com. So I'm curious how your career has evolved, because I've read that you call yourself more of a conductor now. Of course, you have a lot of restaurants, a lot of cookbooks, but you also have this test kitchen and you have a team. So how has your role shifted? You're not cooking quite as much these days.
No, I don't. It has kind of evolved over the years. So from someone who used to cook quite a lot and being hands-on, I'm more hands-off. I cook at home. I cook sometimes at work as well, but mostly I kind of oversee this big, small empire that I've created with my partners, and which has restaurants, publications, book. I've got a Substack column. So there's a whole lot of things that are happening. I publish in newspapers, and the test kitchens, they're kind of the creative hub of this whole this whole enterprise. And I go to the kitchen every single day. We have long discussions about what's going to be cooked. And there's a team of recipe testers that test recipes all the time. I think it's the best job in the world because we kind of cook a little bit aimlessly. We cook for projects, if there's, Thanksgiving or Christmas or any holiday, we kind of create new recipes for those particular occasions. But we also cook when we come across something really delicious. If we went to, as a team or as an individual, you go to Turkish restaurants and you come across something wonderful, and they say, I want to replicate that, or I want to create something like that. That could be the motivation for a day of testing. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I'm there to oversee it, testing, be the judge, and kind of come up with ideas when it comes to those conversations. But it's a very much a group effort. And I think what I try to do is bring people together from different backgrounds. So the palette is more interesting. So we try different things. And I think we end up having a really a kind of a diverse perspective on food, and a very, very interesting one as well.
Yeah, I'm curious how you decide what's going to make it into the book or into a newspaper or Substack, because you have such a diverse team. It started out with such a strong Middle Eastern vibe, and it still has that. But then, you have people on staff who are from Mexico, and you have people from all different cultures. So how are you bringing all of these international flavors together and then saying, this is an Ottolenghi recipe?
This is the biggest conundrum that I have to deal with constantly, because we try a lot of delicious things. Some things feel right, and something feels like they need to be taken that kind of extra step for us to own it. So I think we live in a world where we're exposed to a lot via our screens, cuisines, ideas, recipes, ingredients, which is great. But I also want to feel that it's got to do with me. So I think we try to cook recipes that belong to us. So I would cook something that I feel like I've experienced in the past, ate somewhere, had learned it or grew up with it, etc. And when we sit around the table and judge dishes, they need to feel different in some ways, but also familiar in another way. Mm-hmm. And it's on a case-by-case basis. So I'll give you like an example. For example, for a book that I've published with Easter Belfridge, one of my colleagues, maybe a few years ago, called Flavor, we wanted to kind of create a caponata, which is a Sicilian condiment or dish that involves quite a lot of vegetables. It's a sweet, sour, it's got acidity, it's got olives, it's got capers, and it's a wonderful thing to have. But we added miso to it and a bit of soy, and we kind of took it a little bit in an Asian direction. Not because we felt that it had it or it needed it, but because we thought it would be interesting to experiment with these, because those are wonderful flavors and they've got all that umami, all that saltiness in them. And it worked really well. And we thought like, okay, well, that's an experience that went right. But often we try things and they don't work. So I can't tell you how we decide. All I can say is that we taste it and we think it tastes right. It hits the spot.
Yeah, it's a feeling that you kind of can't explain.
Correct.
I do really respect and appreciate how much you talked about your team over the years, because your name is on everything. So it could be very easy for people to think that you are coming up with every recipe. And I had this shock. I won't name the person's name, but there's an artist who's very famous. I just assumed he had been doing all this work. And then I met a woman who's like, oh no, I work there. I do some of the work. There's like 50 of us. And I was like, what? And then I've learned that this is very common, that there's, a lot of things, whether it's food or art or writing, where there's a name on it, but they're not really doing very much. So I appreciate that you give your team credit for that.
Yeah, it's always been the case. So that it is my name on the door, and there's historical reasons for that. But I have collaborated over the years, especially with the books, with different people. So the earliest book, the Ottolenghi cookbook, and then Jerusalem, I've written together with Sami Tamimi, who is a friend and a co-author, and we've gone a long way in kind of creating the food together. And it wouldn't be right to say that it's my food or not his, or his and not mine. So we published together. But then I've had multiple of co-authors over the years as contributors, and many of them then often go ahead and write their own cookbooks and do their own things individually outside the kind of the Ottolenghi umbrella. And kind of everybody benefits, because it makes the food that I'm involved in more interesting for everybody. But also I can direct people and say, well, actually, let's do it a little bit more this way. So it's a little bit Ottolenghi, as we like to call it. This is just the only way I know how to work, and also how I enjoy working.
It's kind of funny when your name becomes like a noun, an adjective, a verb.
Yeah, it is weird.
We have to Ottolenghi this dish. The first test kitchen I was exposed to belongs to Bon Appetit magazine. I was a longtime subscriber, but I never paid much attention to the bylines. The people writing the recipes were just random names on a page. But starting around 2016, Bon Appetit started featuring their test kitchen cooks and writers on their YouTube channel and podcast. This kind of thing is very common now. But back then, it was revolutionary to turn behind-the-scenes folks into beloved media personalities. So many of those cooks and writers, like Carla Lawley Music, Molly Baz, Sola El Whaley, and Rick Martinez, went on to write their own cookbooks and have successful independent careers in front of the camera. All food magazines rely on test kitchens to churn out recipes month after month, year after year. And I called up someone who has run many of them, editor-in-chief of Food and Wine magazine, Hunter Lewis, who approves every recipe they publish.
Started my career, I entered the kitchen door through Saveur magazine and ran the test kitchen there. I came over to Bon Appetit. I was at Southern Living and ran the test kitchen there and Cooking Light and now Food and Wine. So I've always held the test kitchen as the beating heart of a magazine media brand.
I asked Hunter to give me the stats on the test kitchen.
Food and Wine is a part of People Inc. And here in Birmingham, Alabama, we have a 40,000 square foot test kitchen and photo studio where Food and Wine recipes are tested, People magazine recipes are tested, Southern Living, and some of our sister brands as well. Overall, there are dozens of folks that work in People Inc. food studios, but for Food and Wine, we've got a dedicated crew of about 4 people.
What does it look like in that 40,000 square feet? How many little miniature kitchens are set up?
Yeah, so, 40,000 square feet is a lot of room. So envision 7 kitchens with 4 mini kitchens within each. So you've got basically 28 kitchen spaces where cooks can operate. So that's 28 cooks right there. Most of them are recipe testers and developers. Some are food stylists who are preparing the recipes to be photographed or to be shot on video. Everything that we use in these kitchens is what you would use in a home cook's kitchen. The kinds of stoves, sort of in a mid-level price point that we buy, the kinds of knives, kinds of refrigeration, the other tools. We try to be as general as possible and sort of right down the middle of what the average American consumer might use.
How far in advance do you have to solidify what the magazine is going to have in it? Because, for example, there are things that you can't get year-round, like apricots. I wrote a cookbook and we couldn't photograph the apricot recipe because we photographed them in November. So do you have to maybe come up with that recipe in August and use it the next August so that you can have the ingredients to test with?
For our seasonal recipes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
A good example of this is we've got this gorgeous mango feature coming out soon in a few months. And we shot the whole thing last year because the mangoes were coming in the spring through early summer. So we were photographing those over time and developing the recipes over time. So that's an extreme example of a seasonal story that has to be shot a year ahead. But generally, we work 9-10 months ahead to make sure that we're on the production schedule of the test kitchen. And, that means we're roasting turkeys in June and July. The entire office smells like turkey stock. When it's 95 degrees in Birmingham and you're smelling those smells that really evoke the holidays, it's a real mind trip. The dirty secret of all test kitchen cooks is that they are so sick of Thanksgiving. By the time Thanksgiving rolls around, we want an incredible meal of Chinese food, or we want like super bright, vibrant flavors, anything but just like the salt, fat, acid bomb of Thanksgiving. So it is one holiday when it comes to the food and traditions that I'm kind of over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that sounds un-American of me. Maybe that sounds a little cold-hearted of me, but you definitely get this palate fatigue. And how many different times can you reinvent it?
If you're working 9 or 10 months ahead, how do you keep up with trends? I know you're not always trying to do super trendy things, but I'm thinking, for example, something like Dubai chocolate that kind of came out of nowhere and everybody wants it. Will you break that rule sometimes and jump in with a new recipe to meet what's going on in that moment?
Yeah, it's following your gut. It's looking at data. It's understanding when, people might be making pho. And when they're willing to make that at home. And we've got tons of data that show us when people are searching for it. But the Dubai chocolate question, that's a great example. Certainly we can put something up quickly and make it social, video friendly, and sort of meet the trend in that moment right there. But for us, it's really thinking for the magazine specifically. Okay, we've got this chocolate snacking cake. It's an easy bake. It's delicious. It's the kind of thing that you could make once a week. But because of the Dubai chocolate trend, and because pistachio paste especially and particularly is this ingredient of the moment, we changed that chocolate snacking cake. We changed the frosting to include the pistachio cream in it.
Oh, that's
and that's
smart.
a great example of, hey, you know what? This is a thing, but here's an easy baking recipe. You're not making a candy bar. Here's how you can apply it to a known thing like a snacking cake. And that's how we kind of meet the moment.
That's so smart, because I was interested in making the candy bar and then I never did because I didn't want to buy the mold. I was like, I'm never going to use this mold for anything else, so I'm not making this. I would be someone who would see this cake and go,
buy the candy, make the cake.
Exactly. Yeah. I have this book. It's probably like 15 years old now, called Make the Bread, Buy the Butter. And she basically just lays out, like, you don't need to make ketchup. Like, here's the recipe, but like, you do not need to make this.
Yeah. Anybody making ketchup, there's no way you're making it better than what you can buy.
Exactly.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
That's for the young and foolhardy.
Ketchup is something that you're trying to meet this nostalgic flavor too. So it's like, I want it to taste like Heinz. I don't want it to actually taste like fresh tomatoes. I'm curious how much you act as an innovator and how much you're trying to meet home cooks. Because in that way, I imagine you have to be a bit of an anthropologist. You have to be paying attention to maybe seeing what people are putting in their grocery carts, the economy, so many different things to see where people are at. But then maybe you should be the tastemakers. Maybe you should be the ones who are influencing what people are eating. So how do you kind of balance those two things?
A couple different ways. The way I talk to the team is we need to be a half step ahead of the reader. Don't be a full step. Don't be so far ahead that you're leaving them in the dust. You don't want to introduce 10 new ingredients in a recipe. Introduce one new ingredient. Bring them with you. Creating Food and Wine with a team in Birmingham and also a team in New York has been really beneficial for us over the past 9 years. The way we entertain in Birmingham is so different than apartment living in New York, in that world that Food and Wine was in before, when it was a much more New York-centric brand. I know what it's like to get on my bike and go down Bleecker Street and pick up that baguette and pick up that steak and go to the farmer's market, pick up a couple ingredients and do that a la menu cooking at night. And that's the way I did before I had kids. That was fun. But we are so much more in tune and in line with the way that people are cooking all over the country, thanks to the lens that we have of producing the magazine in Birmingham. It's very, very helpful.
Yeah, I can see that. After the break, Yotam and I get into the philosophy of modern cooking. Is food actually art? Does ugly, delicious food belong in cookbooks? Come back after the break to find out. One way that your old career and your new career come together is with writing. You do a lot of writing. I love your writing. And I specifically love the pieces that you write for the New York Times, where you have an essay before you get into the recipe, because the essays just catch you right at the beginning. I mean, it's like very good creative writing and it's all about your life. And it kind of takes a while sometimes to get to the food. And I love that. And there was a piece you wrote, I think it was earlier this year. It was about soup. And I thought it was really interesting. You were talking about that you love soup, your team loves soup, but it doesn't always make it, into the books because maybe it doesn't photograph well or it seems too simple. And you wrote, the food we get the most comfort from and feel the most relaxed and confident to make can be the very food we don't quite have the confidence to make permanent on the pages of a book. Can you talk about what that means for our society as far as food and cookbooks and cultures are concerned?
I think you're capturing something quite important, and it's not the soup is just one example, but there's a lot of other examples to it. So we live in a world where things need to be communicated and photographed very easily and very quickly, and we know, for example, that certain things work really well on screens and other things don't work so well on screens, and the same applies to the pages of a cookbook. Certain things just jump off the page and look absolutely fantastic, but other things don't, and they're still delicious. Now, historically, it didn't matter. You sat down, you ate, you knew you got the flavors, and that's it. But now we're so screen orientated. We're so image orientated that we end up not having the joy of everything. And if it doesn't look great, then it gets the garnishes. And I have to take ownership of that because I'm part of this movement, if you like, where things need to look good before you actually get exposed to them. And I think sometimes we lose a bit because like gray foods and brown foods are sometimes some of the best foods. But I also think there is a counter movement. I think that people are starting to understand that some things that are not as elaborate looking are actually delicious. And I see a lot of these things now also coming up on my screen or when I open the paper or books, where things that are quieter and simpler also end up being represented on pages. And I think, stews just in general are, they lose their distinctiveness as they cook together, but as they cook together, all the flavors come together. And I see a lot of plain stews being, presented on screens and in people's books. And I think there's a room for that, and it's coming back.
Yeah, David Chang said it best with ugly delicious.
Totally. Yes. And that's so true because he completely captured that thing that ugly is delicious, and ugly not only as wonky, but also ugly as kind of one-dimensional. And it really is important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram has changed everything. And, besides the photography, it's just this idea that everything has to be new and innovative. And I think for some people, they feel like maybe they're less than in their kitchen because they are just making simple food. And in this same piece, you quoted something from Nigella Lawson where she put a recipe out and said, "This isn't going to be the best thing you've ever had, but it's good. We like it." And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, you know that because social media is very shouty. And I think what Nigella was saying is that it doesn't need to be shouty in order to give you the joy and satisfaction of being nourishing, nurturing, delicious. I think it's really, really important to remember those things because it gets very noisy. It's get very, very noisy. But I think the other thing I wanted to add is that there's a very, very massive difference between cooking for the screen and cooking for home. And I think people forget that sometimes, that in order to create that kind of highlight, that kind of big image, you've kind of went on a different route. And real home cooks know that food can be delicious no matter what it looks like. And I feel that there's almost like two types of people: the ones that look and the ones that cook. The ones that look.
Yeah.
And they're like almost like different tribes.
Yeah.
And my kids are like, I've got a teenager and an almost teenager, and they spend a lot of time seeing food and thinking they're very knowledgeable about food. And they say, "Can you make this for me?" I said to them, "This is not even doable." That's just an AI image. I can't cook that, and I'm sure it won't be delicious. So, it's very funny. We have to kind of live that kind of tension and work with it.
What is something that you make at home a lot for your family that you've never published and never will because it's simple or not pretty?
I do a lot of, for instance, just a couple of days ago, I made a quick pasta sauce that had cooked tomatoes and carrots and celery, like I started pasta sauce, and I added a can of chickpeas to it. And I don't know what happened, but it all became a bit brown and red and not very seductive. But it had really great flavors, and I add a lot of feta to it, which just makes everything taste delicious. And the kids absolutely loved it. Now it really didn't look that great, but it was really good. I mean, I think what would happen if I would want to turn that into a recipe, I would probably sear the chickpeas a little bit, give them color to make them distinct. And I would cut the feta into like slabs and make them shiny with olive oil. So effectively, I think I'll still have all those flavor there, but I won't present them in the way I present it to my kids.
You'd need a lot of herbs, a couple little pomegranates on top.
I think pomegranates are overused. I mean, I raise my hand in shame. I've popularized them to many people, but as I get older, I think that less is more, and you don't always need all those things. To be honest, I have a lot of conversations with younger cooks, which are in my team, and they always want to put a lot of things in dishes, to showcase all their talents and skills. And I often say, like, hold back some things and keep it for another dish because it gets lost if there's too much in it.
Pomegranates specifically, I love, but I find if I put them in a salad, they all just fall to the bottom and they're so hard to pick up with a fork that they're actually not that practical, even though I want to have the flavor in my bite.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about salad. So what I do, with not salad related, but the way I love to use pomegranates, so they make a really good salsa for starches, like for a rice. The other day I did that at home. I cooked some rice, and I like to cook rice with something else, like with lentils or rice with noodles or something like that. So it got different textures. And I made this pomegranate salsa, which is really simple, just pomegranates, chopped up cilantro, olive oil, lemon juice, and like a sprinkle of a spice. And I put that on top of the rice, and it's like a buttery rice. And it was so good because it made it like taste super fresh. So the rice, it's buttery and delicious. But then if you have a spoonful of that acidity and sweetness, it was really, really good.
I have all of those ingredients right now and I haven't eaten lunch yet. So maybe I'm going to do that when we get off this call. People often call cooking an art, but you said that you don't think that food and art are the same thing. Can you talk more about that? I
think some cooks or chefs are very artistic in the way that kind of they break the mold and invent new things. So I think some chefs I wouldn't call them artists more than other chefs, but I think there's something about the cooking which is kind of driven out of necessity. We all eat, we all need to eat. And I think it's very important not to elevate it to an art form because it's something that we do day in, day out. I think art is also almost like extracurricular. Art is like what we do when we don't need to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom. That's art for me. And cooking is one of those things. It could be sublime, it could be delicious, it could be absolutely extraordinary, it could be really good. But I think sometimes people fetishize food too much and they take it out of this sphere. And then you end up with things that aren't really delicious because you kind of take it and think, oh, I'll do it for the sake of inventing something new or being hyper creative. And then that just dies away over time. So for me, it is really important to remember we are kind of within the sphere of like basic human needs, and you can do great things with it. But art needs to stay art because that's what we do when we want to almost like leave our daily lives and kind of be inspired by something else.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Another one of the New York Times essays you wrote was about this green rice where you were saying, why did I make it green? Did I make it green because it's pretty? Did I do that? Does it actually have a flavor to it? Like, let me actually think about what I'm doing here.
Yeah, totally. And the only place in the kitchen where I think is more arty is the cakes, desserts, patisserie, because having a cake is not a necessity, and we can all live without a cake. But it's the extra, and then you can go the extra mile with it and make it super elaborate. That's why we do these crazy wedding cakes or any kind of occasion cakes. It's the place where you can be a little bit more artistic, and it's justified because you're using that food for something which is the extra.
Right.
So that is the kind of the corner of the kitchen where I can kind of say, oh, well, that maybe is a little bit closer to art.
And that was Yotam Ottolenghi's last meal. Catch Yotam on tour. He is in Australia now, and he kicks off his North America leg on February 23rd in San Francisco. He'll be in Canada and the US, including here in Seattle on February 26th. Find a link to tickets in the show notes.
So the tour is different because normally it's a more traditional question and answer thing with the moderator, with the host. This time, I'm going to be on stage doing all the talking and all the cooking myself. I never cook on tour. Sometimes I assemble a couple of things, but mostly it's just a conversation. So I'm going to do a little bit more cooking. It will be a bit more instructional. Effectively, what I want to do is I want to show people how they can master a few very simple recipes to lose some of that performative anxiety that people have when they cook for others. So there'll be a bit of cooking, a lot of talking, and a bit of soul searching.
You're going to find yourself up there. I'm sure you've been approached about hosting a show because that sounds like almost doing a cooking show on TV.
Well, no, I bet I have to prove myself first. So I've never done this before. This will be the first time. So fingers crossed it's going to work well.
I think you're going to do great. I believe in you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to Hunter Lewis, editor-in-chief of Food and Wine magazine. How old is Food and Wine? When did it start?
Food and Wine started in 1978. It launched in Playboy magazine as an insert. The founders tried for 5 years to get funding, and Hugh Hefner was the guy that took it over the edge because even though he ate gruel every day, literal gruel, he realized that there was a new emerging consumer called the Epicurean that Food and Wine would relate to. And so he agreed to publish an insert in Playboy in the spring of '78. It spun out and did its own thing, and here we are today.
Wow. I know obviously about TV spinoffs, but I didn't know about magazine spinoffs. That's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. Go to cascadepbs.org to become a member. For as little as $7 a month, you will get on-demand access to all PBS programming, including dozens and dozens of food shows. Everything from Julia Child to my show, The Nosh. We just wrapped on filming season 3 of The Nosh, and 8 new episodes will be coming to your TV or your computer starting in May. You can watch the first 2 seasons at cascadepbs.org or on YouTube or in the Alaska Air in-flight entertainment. Find a link in the show notes, which is also where you'll find a link to sign up for my newsletter, which is also called The Nosh. This episode was produced by me and senior producer Sarah Bernard, who also mixed and mastered it. Original theme music by Prom Queen. I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal.
When Barry Diller and IAC bought Food and Wine as a part of the acquisition from Meredith, he came to Birmingham. He wanted to come sit down and figure out what he had purchased. And so we shared the history of Food and Wine, put the Playboy on the table from 1978. And I said, this is where we came from. And I forgot to take the magazine back to my office. And we have this amazing, sweet, very Southern office manager here. And she very quietly, very politely brought it back upstairs and put it on my desk. And she said, I think you forgot something.
Yeah, it's a fine line between history and getting sent to HR.
Very true. Very true.
I have a friend who has these Braille copies of Playboy. They're real in the Library of Congress, and he keeps them in the bathroom, and it's very funny. You're obviously only reading for the articles in this case.